What is up, everybody? It is me, Duke Farley, back at it again here on Lost at Sea. And today I am unfortunately joined by Kennedy, who is the sixth placer, sixth juror of Ascendance Live Season 2. Kennedy, thanks for joining me. How are you? What has been up?
I am doing all right. I've been eagerly awaiting my episode. So now that it's done, I can't say that it came too soon, but that's all right.
Yeah, no, you definitely made it real far in the game. So props to you on that.
Thank you.
But let's start from the beginning of this journey with you. Um, is this your first live game? I wanted to know how did you find this kind of setting?
Yeah, so it is my first live game. I was aware of season one. I think a lot of us kind of watched season one and knew of it. I was pretty close with a handful of the people who played. So it was something that I paid decent attention to, enough to know like when we were playing, like, oh, this comp was in season one. But apparently not enough to like know the format. Um, I won Captain Week 1 and I had no idea that I didn't get to play in the escape room. I was really upset about it. So Ascendance wise, I'm a little familiar. Live games though, I was brand new.
Cool. You mentioned winning captain the first week. You won captain like 5 or 6 times. So
Yes.
I think that's a record in live right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
congratulations for
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Is
you.
that kind of was that the plan going in? Like you wanted to win a lot of competitions, or were you kind of like along the lines of now I have a target, I have to win?
So I think early on, I guess so I've done orgs for a while. It's been I think 2 years now. And I've kind of recognized that comps are something that I'm strong at. In the online versions of things. I didn't know necessarily how it would translate to a live game, and so it was really just stay on your feet, stay adaptable, try to rely on yourself if you can. Went in kind of thinking I'd play an individual game, potentially having to rely on competitions, but the goal was just to be really social. I think my early game, if you look at me like pre-jury versus jury phase, I think is really different. You can tell my early game, I really tried to be very social, very strategic. um, I wasn't planning on showing my comp ability right away because I wanted to be underestimated, and I think I kind of messed up the opportunity to be underestimated. But no, I definitely did not go in expecting that.
Um, you mentioned, loosely knowing the format of Ascendance.
Mhm.
Obviously, captain picks the teams. With you winning the first one, was there any like plan there to go like with picking the teams, or was it kind of like people you knew or
It was
liked?
it was mostly people that I knew.
Mhm.
Um, I tried to. I don't entirely remember who was on my first team. I know that I picked Drew right away. Drew was someone that I had known beforehand, and Drew was a really good friend of mine, so I knew that Drew would be a really safe choice. And I want to say ended up picking people who I was familiar with. I think I picked Ryan because we made eye contact. Like I really had to kind of hide that I knew people because I didn't know the connections everybody had. Um, but for that one and we won't necessarily go into it right now, but for some other ones, I did not necessarily pick teams the most strategically. Um, I really just the goal was have someone that you're trying to protect, have someone that you can pick off and build around that. So, other than that, there wasn't a ton of strategy to it.
Cool. So you knew Drew going into this. Was there anybody else that you knew that was on the cast this season?
Yeah, so I knew Drew, I knew Marvin, I knew Hako Chris, I knew of Jodalee. We had interacted like once. I knew Christopher and I knew Keaton. I think that's everybody. Is that six? I knew six people. If I missed you, I'm sorry. I love you.
I believe that
Don't
was
drag me if you're
six.
watching this. It was perfect. That's everybody I knew. I knew
Um,
of Zoe's existence, but I didn't have like if you would have said like the girl who's on CTC Prod, I would have or like one of the girls on CTC Prod, I would have known Zoe when she introduced herself like that. I knew of her, um, but I didn't like know her like individually.
Shout out to CTC Prod.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that's a game. That's an org of some sort.
Yes. Yep. It is,
Um,
I would argue, one of the not necessarily better Survivor ones because I'm not trying to shade on other Survivor ones, but I've heard good things about
so
CTC.
apply here.
I don't
Um,
know. I think they just wrapped one up. But
well,
yes, do it.
get the next one.
Yes.
Um,
They care a lot about the game.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, cool. So you knew about six people going in.
Yep.
Would you say, the people that you knew going in were the people that you wanted to work with and, ultimately ended up working with?
Um, yes, but I don't think it happened like that right away. So, round one, I think was really defining. What the episode doesn't show is it was either Keaton or Wesley for probably 20 minutes of the 30 minutes we got. Because I think we got about half an hour for that first one. And it was the group of, it was like me, Hako Cress, Marvin, Jodely, and Erica, I want to say all got together and we were like the Keaton protection squad. We were not going to let Keaton be the first boot. Um, and so I think it just kind of came down to who the name fell onto a couple times. Looking at how my game played, you would think that my closest relationship going into the game was with Marvin. I barely knew Marvin. We had played a game together, but like it was like 2 rounds. I hosted him. He got second boot. Like I wasn't super familiar with him. So I tried to be really open with who I was working with, but it did end up just being the people that I knew ahead of time. There were definitely a handful of people that I enjoyed getting close to, and I love Carson. I got to shuttle down with. Carson is lovely. Paul, I got really close to. Um, but just in general, it was typically people that I knew. I definitely was very lucky in the fact that I knew people.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of people that were, outside of this four-person alliance that was
Mhm.
basically, um, what would be like the main alliance of the season, I guess you would say.
Yep.
And you kind of had a lot of allies that were not in that. So was there any ever any like band together between you guys, like the Carsons, the Marvins, the Pauls, Hako Chris of the world will be like, we got to get those people out?
Oh, definitely, but not organized enough. I think that's where they had the upper hand. Is they were very organized. They were like, these are your people. Because if you pay attention to who I was close to, right? I had my Marvin, I had my Drew, and my Jodely, my Hako Chris. Jodely has wanted Drew out the whole game, right? Jodely repeatedly, you see tons of confessionals of Jodely wanting to push Drew down the stairs. Marvin goes and has fights with Jodely. Hako Chris is just being Hako Chris and doing what Hako Chris does and not pissing people off. But my people, the people who were kind of on the outs of the alliance, granted Drew was in it, but we weren't organized enough to not go against each other. Um, Carson got picked off not early, but Carson got picked off as I would argue like a casualty. Because of us not being organized and us not knowing what we were doing. Same with like Paul. Um, the dynamics were so like webbed and intertwined that if you weren't intertwined enough, you got picked off like late pre-jury, early jury.
Yeah. It's interesting. I want to get to the, picking where Paul or Carson goes home. But before we go there, um, I want to talk to you about Balloon Gate. It's
It's
something,
real. I'm tired of people saying Balloon Gate is not real.
so it's
Oh,
real. So tell me
it's
why it's
real.
real. Tell me what happened at Balloon Gate and explain it
Okay.
to me from your perspective.
I think I think it's real because I think I define it differently than other people. Because
Hmm.
for a lot of people it wasn't important. For me it was really important because I was involved and I had to cross my fingers that no one knew that I was involved. I was not nearly as involved as anyone else, but Balloon Gate really it really shifted the house against Melissa. It really pulled down Carson and made Carson look like he was connected to Melissa. Like there was so much about Balloon Gate. It wasn't just, oh, the people who are the runners are lying about having powers. It was way more in depth about that. And Balloon Gate was talked about. Like that was one of the first things that I hit the jury house and I wanted to talk about Balloon Gate. Like it was a big thing to the players. Production's like, oh, it's not real. Balloon Gate is real. It had a lot of effect in the game.
How much do you think Balloon Gate was blown up to make other people's like make people
Oh,
more threatening than they actually were?
100%. And I would argue that I participated in that. If I could throw people under the bus, I would do it because Carson, I love you, but if heat was going down, because we were in little bubble. It was me, Marvin, Paul, and Carson was on the green team, I think. Melissa was on the other team. It was me, Marvin, and Paul. And we were like, they did this in season one. They teamed up. Marvin got all of the heat for that. Shout out to Marvin because I didn't have to take any of it. Like the goal was push people so that I can pull back because I had just I believe what Balloon Gate was, I think week three, around three.
Yeah, three.
I had just won captains 1 and 2. I needed the heat to go somewhere else. I needed the attention to go somewhere else. So if I could push narratives, I would do it because I had to hide. So that's why Balloon Gate was real for me because I used it to hide myself. I don't know how real it was for other people, but
It's a mystery, but it's
it'll
fun
never
to
be
get.
solved.
It'll never be solved. It's fun to get other people's perspectives, of one of the biggest hashtags of Ascendance life history. Um,
Balloon Gate.
but so you mentioned Marvin. Marvin is somebody that is, pretty much your ride or die, it seems like, through
Yes.
up the course of the game, or
Hmm.
at least part towards the end, middle portion. I wanted to ask you, it was such a funny scene where Marvin sees a public power, and I think you were in the area. So
Hmm.
how, like, I think he said in his exit interview that he asked you if you saw the power, and you were like, no, and then he was like, okay, well, it's there, so let's
Hmm.
grab it. So talk to me about all the shenanigans with powers. You guys were blindfolded at one point, finding a power. Like
Hmm.
so much to talk about with those.
Oh, it was, yes. The powers were a mess. I never found a power. I never held a power, but I was very familiar with them. So Marvin, I remember I was coming downstairs or I was in the downstairs living room and Marvin and I make eye contact and he does the little like the subtle like come here, like come over here. Like really, you know. So I come over there and conveniently, we have people. If you remember in the episode, Marvin and I are like on the end of the conversation. There's like a person here, people over here, and Marvin and I are over here. And Marvin is like, there's a power like right there. Like, do you see it? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I look and I see it. And Melissa's standing right there. And early game, like it was me and Melissa like butting heads. I was like, she can't know that we have this. Um, so the goal, my goal being, as people have previously stated, loud. I'm this is not new for me. I'm very aware that I'm loud and I talk a lot. I was like, I got this. I'm gonna distract them. So I was going to start having a conversation and then pull them into the Coliseum, be like, we should talk about what's going on and move them away. So as we're going, he can grab it. But instead, I start talking, and as soon as everyone's looking at me talking, he turns to grab it as they're looking at us. It was again unorganized. This is a very common theme for me. I'm very glad that he got it and no one noticed it, other than Jodalee. Because I think if the wrong person would have noticed, it would have definitely been called out, and later on things would not have happened the way they did. Um, and so I think that was really kind of solidifying me and Marvin. I didn't recognize, but in the very first episode, I remember watching it with some friends and them saying, "Oh, well, like your ride or die is Marvin. Like you're really close with Marvin." And I didn't even recognize Marvin and I that first night. We walked around together, we sat next to each other. We were really close. But for me, like the defining moment of Marvin and I is finding that first half of the pendant. Because when you're in the game and you're in the moment, it's like you're finding it together. It feels like you're finding it together. He gets the credit, but I was standing there. Um, and so that first half was big, and then obviously he gets the power from Balloon Gate. I refuse to call it any other thing. And then that's all fine and dandy. And then the second one, so I don't know why they let us be captains together, or I don't know why they let us be partners. Um, Everybody was teaming up. You would think that the goal would be like, especially because I believe Erica didn't want to participate. I don't know why they didn't stick Erica with one of us, but whatever. So
Would
Marvin
you
and I end up.
have, not to cut you off, but
No,
would
go
you
ahead. I
have
talk a lot. You're
entertained
fine.
would you have entertained that like during the duo portion? Would you have entertained
Oh,
being with another a person?
oh, 100%. Marvin and I were stuck together because I was in the house and everyone already had someone.
Hmm.
Marvin was the only, like, it hit me a little bit. It felt like high school when no one likes you because you talk too much and you're weird. I was like, I've done this before. I didn't know who was left. And I go outside and it's Marvin and we're just laughing at that point. Because if you I don't think we had no, we hadn't gotten the description for the comp yet, I don't think. Um, but I just the two people, the worst case for the house. Um, we end up pairing up. The comp was very good for us. Um, I had no idea what the puzzle was. Somehow we got it. Even when we were putting the puzzle pieces together and I saw that it was done, I didn't even recognize that we did it right. Um, we pick our teams, whatever. We can talk about that. This is about the powers right now. And so I'm recognizing that they're blindfolded, and Marvin gives me shit for this. But I asked Papa because they specifically told us to stay behind the tables and not get in the way. That's why I asked permission. Papa said, "I don't care, go look." And then immediately we find it in the plant in the living room. Um, and we're freaking out and excited, and we run to the laundry room like everybody does when they find something. You have to go to the laundry room if it's something important. Um,
Of
but
course.
no, it was crazy.
Um, so let's dive into that round because I want to talk
There's
about
a
the
lot
team
that
picking.
round.
You mentioned, you and Marvin winning, you guys become partners
Mhm.
during that round. You guys win captain with the puzzle. So what was the thought process behind picking the teams? I know Carson has come on and he was like, I don't know what happened. Marvin said kind of a brain fart. Would you say that's a good assumption, a good,
Um,
way to put it?
yes. So I think Marvin and I both messed up different parts. So I went in with the mindset like, um, well, one, they had hit us with, oh, well, those who weren't picked yet are now in a mystery team a couple times. Um, and then also the whole, well, you don't want to be picked last. And so Marvin picks Paul. Um, or no, did Marvin pick Paul or Carson? Marvin picks one. And
Mhm,
my thought process is, okay, well, I want to pick the other. We're going to pick them early. They're going to be fine.
mhm.
That's not smart. I don't know why I did that. It was not a good call. We should have had them together. I was just too excited and I wanted to keep them safe. So I said, I'm going to snatch you up. You'll be safe. That's not how it happened. So that's how I messed up. Marvin, if you watch the episode back, Marvin and I have a conversation, and I believe it's Erica and Thomas because after Melissa goes, my target immediately shifts to Thomas. After after we're picking teams, we're doing the strategy. Marvin says, I believe, you pick Erica, I'll pick Thomas, and then proceeds to pick Erica. And so we messed up our last picks as well. And I believe it was Erica and Jodalie who were the last picks. We messed up not having them together and who we had at the bottom of the not the hit list because that sounds terrible. But like the target list. Um, so we both messed up there. We are both both at fault. It was not
But
not our brightest move.
if you had to do it over again, you would have tried to set up the team to go after Thomas, is what you're
Yes.
saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So Thomas, that became the person that you wanted to get out after Melissa was eliminated.
After Melissa. Yep, because Melissa, the whole goal for going after Melissa was because I had heard that Melissa was going after me. It was really just more of like a defense thing. I don't normally play in these games really offensive. I don't take shots, I don't throw names, um, unless I have a reason to, because my goal is to try to keep everybody, like all my options open. Even round one, when I threw the vote on Melissa, it was really I threw the vote because um Ryan had asked me to not vote for him. My very first vote in an org, I threw a vote so that an ally wouldn't be first boot unanimously. My first vote in a live game was that I threw a vote so that an ally wouldn't be first boot unanimously, and to cause a little chaos because now I know that that's fun. But it was never against Melissa specifically, and so the whole Kennedy versus Melissa thing really stemmed from me being told that she's going against me. So as soon as that had kind of ended, I knew that I needed to kind of shift my focus somewhere else. And Thomas is a force to be reckoned with. He's an amazing player, insanely smart. Like definitely, um, looking back, even how everything happened, Thomas is definitely the person that I would have had my target on just because he's such a great player.
Had Melissa and had she come
Mhm.
to you with like some sort of peace agreement, and you guys, would you have been open to working together with Melissa?
I would have. So she definitely tried. I am very stubborn. I am too blunt sometimes. We all saw it. I walked up to her and said, "You can't do me. What's your name?" That was rude. Um, so I think that if it would have been in a round where either we were both vulnerable or we were both safe, I would have. But she did it the round she was going. Um, and I'm at fault for that too. Like I can talk to her. It's not a one-way street. I could have done better. But for her to come to me like the round that she was going and be like, "This is great. Like we can come together and like work on this together," after I had publicly been pushing her, and it just seemed like it was a lot more in it for her. There wasn't really anything in it for me. She needed me at the time. Was the perception. Um, it just wasn't as appealing as getting her out because she had been pushing my name. So,
Yeah, I only asked that because as soon as Melissa leaves the game, it seems like the target kind of shifts to the duo of
yes.
you and Marvin. So I was like,
Hmm.
I wonder if they had gotten on the same page, would that have benefited Kennedy
And what would
more,
have happened?
and what would have happened? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I did not have the game sense at the time. That's all right.
so
Hindsight's 2020.
yeah, hindsight's 2020. You know, we all have fun in these games, and we look back and we're like, damn, maybe I should have done
I could have
something
done
different.
that different. Yep.
Anyways, so you guys, kind of let Carson or Paul, I think, gets eliminated that round, where
Hmm.
you guys are captains. And from that point on, when did you feel like you needed to just kind of like win out? Did you feel like as soon as the duo was like out there in the open, was that when you particularly felt like you needed to win like back to back to back, or you go home?
So I started feeling like I needed to win. Conveniently the round that Marvin and I were put together and won. Like you can see me, Marvin and I are overly loud. We're not cocky and arrogant. We just realized we made jury. We were very excited.
Who
Um,
isn't? It's Jerry.
right, everyone's like, they overdid that. They were celebrating too much. Girl, we just made jury. Come on, don't be so rude. But yeah, I definitely felt like you can hear me say over and over, like, "Oh, we needed that. We needed that." I kind of knew that I was towards the bottom. Especially once you watch your allies go one by one. Like typically, with the exception of Zoe, she navigated that very well. But in the game, if you see your allies starting to go, you know that you're next. Um, and so it was really from that point on, it was I need to win out. I knew we had the pendant. I didn't know if he was going to give it to me. And so I knew at that point it was you play for yourself. And you have to rely on your comp ability and hope that they throw things at you that you can win.
So let's talk about that pendant. Um, what a play, right? You get in a little bit of trouble and you're like, hey Marvin, or I don't know, how does that happen? Like how do you approach that situation? Like it seems like he kind of just wanted to give it to you, right?
Yeah, so we knew that I was going to be the vote. It was pretty obvious. I think the entire property knew that I was going to be the vote. It was really just a matter of kind of picking what route you go about it. Either um you can lay down and lie and say like don't tell anyone you have the pendant and be like I can't do this and cry like I did and be fake, or you can work hard, you can push, you can try to get the name on somebody else and hope that they don't take you out. um I don't know Marvin's mindset. I don't know why, because he pulls me very beginning of the round and gives it to me and says, "Play it. I don't care if it doesn't work. Play it." Um, so I could have chosen the other route, but instead I was fake.
So I want to ask about that. You were trying to pretend like, oh, I'm going, right? Like
Mhm.
I am going to get all the votes. Do you think, I mean, everybody votes for you, yes, but do you think they bought it that you didn't have an idol? Because, it was pretty obvious you guys went into like a separate room for like the
Mhm.
transfer.
So at the time, a lot of the reaction from me playing it, is cut. You can't really watch a lot of it because during the vote, I play the pendant, I sit down and I look at Wesley and I say, I'm sorry. So
He
Wesley
said that.
knew.
You
Yeah.
told me that.
Yeah. So they had to edit that out. Um, so but I guess I can't necessarily speak for them, but you would think if they had any suspicion, one of them would have thrown a vote. Um, it was very obvious that Marvin had something. I think at one point you can see me say like Marvin, they're like, "Oh, did Marvin give you something?" And I'm like, "What, his block a vote?" Just acting stupid. Um, so I don't entirely know. I personally don't think that they believe that I had something because like I had it like tucked in my shirt. I was giving people hugs and then afterward they were like, "Oh my God, that's why you were giving me half hugs," or "Oh my God, that's why you did this," or like clicking afterwards why I was acting so weird and why I was being so difficult. And I just feel like that like light switch, like when you can see the light switch kind of flip, um I don't think I would have gotten that reaction if they had a suspicion that I had it.
I think you're right because, everybody here is a gamer. They would think potentially throw a vote if they got the glimpse that you might have had something. So I want to talk to you about the decision to vote out Wesley. I was talking to Marvin obviously a couple of weeks ago, and he's in the episode. I was like, it seemed like you wanted Kennedy to vote out Jodely at that point, but you decided to go for Wesley, and you told him that right before that you were going to do that. So I want to hear what your reasoning was for Wesley over Jodely, or I guess anybody at that elimination.
Yeah. So, I think with Jodely, it had been really hard. Jodely and I's games, um, we had this like weird back and forth of working together and not working together, like pretty closely. Um, we were really, really close right away, and then it was like the Jodely Christopher vote, and Jodely was really close to going right when Jodely saw that we found the first half. And then we go back to Jodely and I being close again, and Jodely tells me like, "Hey, I saw Marvin grab something," not knowing that I was aware. Um, and with Wesley, I feel like I really had to take the 50-50 of Wesley and I don't have a strong game relationship. I was under the impression that Wesley was very close to Melissa, and I wasn't going to build a lot of like leeway there. I think if Wesley and I would have worked together, it would have been on a numbers, logic, statistic basis of we need to go forward together because that's our option rather than a relationship basis. And relationships tend to hold up a little bit more. People have more room for error in relationships. Um, and so it just made more sense for me to keep Jodely, especially because Jodely and Drew being the cute little rival thing was pretty public knowledge, and I knew that I was at the bottom and I needed to have someone who would have a target above me.
Okay, that makes sense. And it seemed like Marvin's relationship with Wesley was even prior to the game, so that's probably why he wanted you to vote Jodely at that point.
Yeah.
But
And
that totally
that I had been told about, but I didn't realize how close they were.
me either. Me either. Um, okay, cool. So the next round, you clutch a team victory, but your duo partner, now vulnerable without any protection, is
Hmm.
eliminated. Was that tough to watch that
It was
happen?
gut wrenching. It was so I don't know if you pay like if you've noticed at all, but Marvin has this like giraffe slap bracelet that he wears. It's just a bracelet that's like on his wrist. And before Papa comes out to read the votes, he like takes it off and like throws it to me. And it's the most like heartbreaking moment. Like everybody saw it. Everyone kind of knew Marvin was going. And so then I wear the bracelet for like the rest of the time that I'm in the game. And it's like, oh, it was a really dramatic. It was overly dramatic. But it hurt to see because I couldn't do anything. Because the harder that I tried to keep him, the more they wanted to let him go. So I had to step back and make him show them, like, hey, I'm worth keeping around. Because if I step in, what's the point?
Right. And he was unable to convince them. He ultimately was eliminated and they blocked his vote. So just add a little bit
I
more insult
know.
to injury there.
Oh, Erica.
Really overkill there. But so Marvin's eliminated. And this is where you go on a two win streak, whatever
Mhm.
we're calling that. And yeah, the game gets a little bit shaken up here towards the end, right? So what was your positioning here on the Thomas elimination, the next one where you're safe, right? And Thomas is kind of blindsided, right?
Yes.
So I guess the big pivot was, Taisha went from her one alliance to the
Queen.
other one alliance. I'm
In
looking
my
back at the
favor.
in your
She had no
favor.
idea.
And you were on the right side of that, I believe, right? Yeah, you
Yes,
vote
I
out
voted
Thomas
Thomas.
there.
Yep.
So at that point, once Thomas goes, a little chink in the armor of that main alliance, would you
Hmm.
say that's when you kind of saw a little bit of light, like you were feeling a little bit,
Oh, definitely.
more hopeful? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think that that opened up a lot of doors for me because and I would argue that it opened up a lot of doors for myself as well as Hako Chris and Jodalee because that alliance was there and I think Erica kind of was always protected with them. They kind of always wanted to pull Erica in. But it gave us room to pull in either Zoe and Drew or Taisha. Um, and it kind of split them up a little bit and I ended up leaning more towards Zoe and Drew. I guess more so Drew. Zoe and I, we had a really strong relationship. We fell off because she had her alliance, which is it makes sense. And then Zoe and I came in swinging. We were like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do great. And then regardless, it gave me two people that I didn't previously have. And it gave them the awareness, like Taisha just flipped on us. What are we going to do about that to kind of take some of the heat off of me? None of it was my doing, other than saying, I want Thomas gone. Um, None of the behind the scenes stuff was my doing. People didn't want to give me information because they just wanted me gone. But I am very happy with how it happened because it bought me, like, I think it bought me rounds. I was safe, but I got information.
So like there's a twist of adding a co-captain to your captain
Yes.
win.
Is that
So
not a normal Ascendance thing?
that is a later org
Okay.
season thing at least. But yeah, it's kind of like a main twist now in the game.
Yeah.
So the two times that you went captain back to back here, you chose people that were towards the end of the competition,
Mhm.
Drew and then Erica. Do you feel like if the role was reversed, they would have saved you with the
No.
co-captain?
Maybe Drew. Um, maybe, but I do think that Drew is sort of up for debate. I think Drew would have picked either myself or Zoe, because again, I think Erica was protected. Um, but there's no way that Erica would have saved me. I mean, she might have, but if she did, it would have been a bad move. It would not have been a good take. Um, but you gotta try. You gotta throw out what you can. Do whatever you can to make allies. They said it. I was giving answers to everybody. I was like, if you want it, like I can tell you, because worst case it'll come down to who can find it and run back to the platform the quickest, and I believe in myself when it comes to my little feet going, so it's all I had.
How disappointed were you watching the episode back, seeing the pennant of power in the pool? And that could have been another week for you.
I would argue it was more disappointing watching it back than it was watching it live, like watching Drew grab it, because I don't know. I was so hyper focused because I knew I had to win. That's the thing. Like I know my reasoning. Like when you have like in the movies when you have like this predator that's like toned in on this prey and it gets like red around them and they're like rage. That was me. So did I mess up? Yes. But everybody else, ugh. I don't know how we didn't see it. I don't know how any of us didn't see it. It was right there. It was covered, but it was right there. Um, And I strongly believe that if Erica and I had been standing on the sides of the pool, Drew would not have gone all the way around and he wouldn't have found it. But he
But he
did.
did.
But he
Yeah.
did.
So he finds that very public pennant of power. And the next round, right, you are vulnerable. You did not win the captain's challenge. Hot girl
Oh,
Chris clutches it.
King. I love
Um,
him.
who Hot girl Chris clutches two in a row, kind of like you, back to
Hmm.
back. But so you're vulnerable. Did you? So everybody knows about the public pennant of power that Drew has in his possession at this point. Um, and how confident were you that everybody else was going to split the vote between you two? Were you like sold on that? Because it seemed like it was
Oh,
up in the air till the end.
very. I I didn't even realize until watching it back when Jodie was in the voting, like going back and forth, like, does it make sense? Which is great because that means I almost had Jodie. But I was convinced you can see it in the episode where Papa says, like the sixth member of our jury or the next person voted out, and I snapped my head at Drew. Because I was just like crushed because Drew gave me his word that he was going to be voting with me. And I was like, wow, Drew, like that hurt. And Drew knows me in games quite well, so he knew that that's like very significant jury management, and I'm going to respect it if he gives me his word. Um, and so I was like, Drew, like that this is something that's important to me. Why did you not vote with me? And then he did, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. Like I was convinced that I was just going and I was going to be the only vote on Erica. Um, so I'm grateful that it went to a
Papa
tie.
loves to do that. He loves to do the little
Mm-hmm.
suspense thing where he's like, and
Yes,
the
he does.
sixth member
Both
needs to
in
be
the game
decided tonight.
and the editing.
Yes, yes. But continue. What were you were saying about so you weren't surprised that they split it.
No, I was I wasn't surprised that they split it between Drew and I. I knew that they were going to try to flush the pendant. Um, I was surprised that it wasn't, oh, what, like 3-2-1? Yeah.
Oh, so you thought
Is it?
that maybe
I thought
somebody
I was
would.
going to be the only one on Erica. They were going to split between Drew and I was just going to look dumb.
Oh, okay.
Not dumb, but like it was like, okay, this is my time to go. I wasn't expecting them to give me the tie that they did.
Right. You didn't think that Drew was going to vote with you, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Um,
no, he had told me, but you could like if you watch my reaction, I am very visibly upset that Drew lied to me, and then Papa's like, he didn't. I was like, oh, that was a little embarrassing. I looked a little rude, but I looked a little rude a lot this season, so
I'll
it
have to go
happens.
back and check that out.
Yeah, I
I,
like snapped my head at him.
so revote happens. Obviously,
Yes.
you are feeling like you kind of see the writing on the wall there, you'd
Mm,
say.
yeah, I think there's potential that if Hawkeye Chris picks Taisha to be co-captain, I would see potential that they would Suri out Jodie, but just Taisha in the position that she was in, she's not getting Suried out. They're not gonna let her go out like that. Um, it came down to Erica and I had been telling them like, listen, Erica is in the prime position. That was my whole pitch is Erica's gonna make it to the end. Erica's like all of you want to bring Erica because Erica's so loved by everybody. Um, that was all I had. I was like, she's got this really strong social game, and I say that, but if you're gonna put social versus physical, I guess physical was scarier.
Yeah, it's tough. So you ultimately are eliminated there on the revote. You head to the jury house.
Yes.
Was it a warm welcoming for you in the jury house, or were people a little bit mad?
Um, I mean, it was warm in the sense that like I walked in the door and people were like, Kennedy. No one was surprised. But people were like, "Oh, Kennedy." I remember
Seems like
Marvin was
most of the jury was people that you were friends with, right? Like allies of yours.
yeah. The jury was a lot nicer to me than the pre-jury. A lot nicer to me. Marvin, we have footage of us like walking into the jury. I don't know if they're ever going to show that. So sorry, Ascendance, if I just expose that and you're never showing people. But Marvin right away is like, Kennedy, and Zoe comes and gives me like the biggest hug, and I can't move my arm because that comp messed up my wrists. And so it was really sweet. There were a couple people who were like really excited to see me. Um, but no, I immediately went into a very like heavy conversation with someone in the house. And then a lot of the jurors were like, I didn't appreciate how you handled me. I was not welcomed very warmly. So yeah, I learned very quickly that the way I play these games online hurts a lot. And people don't get over it when you do it to their face. So I
Some
could have been a
people
little
do.
nicer, but
Some people
some
do.
people do. Some people do. And it depends. I was definitely out of line sometimes. Um, but yeah, it was not the warmest of welcomes, but I had to do it, you know. It is what it is.
You have to do it. Time heals all wounds. And so you have the one more responsibility in the game to vote for the winner. Can't really touch too much on that because we haven't been told who
We don't
has
know who it
won the
is yet.
game. We don't know
Yeah.
who's there. We don't know who's won. But what basically what are you looking for with your vote? What are you looking for in a person to win the game?
So for me, it's really and in Ascendance and in orgs, I really look for someone who can kind of sell their game. Because I strongly believe that I'm not going to understand your game until you tell me your game when you can. If I'm playing a game with you, you're not going to give me the ins and outs because you need to hold that to yourself. So if you can sell me, this is what I did and this is why I'm here, that'll earn my vote. Is someone who even if you seem like you're an underdog and you didn't play the best game or you didn't have this power, that's a big thing for me in games. If you have power, if you have influence, that's huge. But just because I don't see you have influence doesn't mean you don't have it. So it's someone who can show me what they did.
Cool. And hopefully we will see, well, we will see how you end up voting come finale
Yes.
night. But Kennedy, before I ask my last question to you, is there anything up to this point that we haven't covered that you want to cover?
No, I don't think so. I think I shouted out all the people that I wanted to shout out. If I didn't shout you out, don't take it personally. I probably love you. Uh,
Yeah.
no. I think that's kind of all I got.
So lastly, what was your favorite part of the entire experience?
Honestly, I had two, and I talk a lot, so that probably doesn't surprise you. Um, I think one is getting to find that part of myself. I was in a really rough spot, and just like struggling, and I said it in my meet me. I'm underestimated, you know. Um, and I kind of came in and I was like, I want to come in with like oomph. I want to see what I can do. And I really kind of proved to myself that I could do a lot more than I thought I could. If you would have told me at the beginning that I would have won that like waterfall thing with my arms straight up in the air, I would have been shocked. Um, so it was really just getting to push myself. Because I'm young and that's cool to like learn right away. It's like, hey, you can do cool shit. Um, and then the other one was definitely putting faces to names and meeting the people. I had been insanely close with like these were some of my org best friends. Like Keaton was one of my best friends for the longest time. I would call with him every single night for hours. So like walking out and like seeing him and being like, oh my God, like that's insane. Obviously it was not reciprocated, but I was so excited to see him. Or Hako Chris, who I had played a game with. We tried to do cool shit. It didn't happen, and I got taken out for ninth, but we had like such a cool moment to then get to have like that rush of like, you're right here. And that rush doesn't stop until you're on your plane home. It's just crazy. So it was definitely um finding myself and then finding my friends. It was really cool. Don't get me the wrong, the game is great. I highly recommend go have fun and play your heart out because even if you have regrets, you have so much more than the people who are too afraid to go play. Just go do it. What's the worst that can happen? Um, but it's really the connections. I'm a people person, so it's always going to be the people.
Awesome. Yeah, it was so fun watching you play this season.
Thank you.
You killed it. I think
Thanks.
record for most challenge wins. So, and you almost got there at the end, but a
Almost.
little short, a little short. But thank you so much, Kennedy, for joining me tonight on Lost at Sea. I appreciate you taking the time out of your night. And yeah, thanks.